Welcome, Max Lieberman, to the Inherent Risk podcast. We're excited to have you here to talk to you about the topic of concussions in sports and the risks that pertain around it. So we're looking forward to talking to you today, and want to start by asking you, were you aware of the risks of concussions throughout your life, and how has your awareness and your education since changed then?
Thanks for having me, Joel. I know we haven't spoken in a while, but I appreciate it. Uh, Honestly, I wasn't until, if you remember, the Chris Benoit double suicide, double murder, shall I say, suicide. That's when it really brought to life, because I remember watching a documentary, I believe it was on CBC, and they're talking about how Chris Benoit had a brain of 80-something
8-year-old
year old.
man, I remember
Yeah,
that.
and he was only his early 40s, if I recall, or late 30s, and it blew my mind. I didn't understand that, that whacking someone over the head with a steel chair or jumping off a top rope for a headbutt, how much damage it did to your brain. And that really opened my eyes to the fact that concussions were a huge thing, a big deal, and that's when it really came to life to me. And I believe I was like 14, 13, 14 at the time. For the second part, how it has changed, it just, I've been more aware since my own injuries with from playing hockey, water skiing, and trying to be a pro wrestler, that it's a combination of things. Not only having experiencing a concussion, but also the fact of being banged up and not being able to do certain things I used to be able to do. So I just became more aware about my body, about what my body's capable of. A big theme you're gonna notice for my questions is answers. Actually, it's gonna be just listening to my body and listening to the fact that when my body tells me I shouldn't do something, I won't do it.
No, it's a very important point, and towards a younger demographic of athletes and even just generally people that listen, they don't generally understand that point. So I think that was very good that you brought that up. And in terms of your own concussion experiences, I'm wondering how it has affected your life in terms of what you dealt with and some of the symptoms that you dealt with.
For me with symptoms, I felt fog. You know that fog that you have in your brain. Like I remember one time when I was water skiing, and I was actually slumming, and I went flying out the boot, and I landed head first on the water. I remember being a little foggy coming out, but this was like right around when the Chris Benoit um double, double murder suicide, and I was like foggy, but the whole if you feel okay, you keep going. Like even though you felt the fog, it was like the 1960 man, 50 man. Like you're tough, you're fine. Go back
Right.
out there. Same idea. Didn't think too much about it, and just kept going. Obviously, but other symptoms I had was um, when I landed in my head weird, taking a wrestling move wrong, and I felt dizzy working out, and I knew I should stop, and I felt I was going to puke, but I didn't do that. I kept pushing through, and this is nothing against the people who are training. This was just me being stubborn, me
Right.
being I had to be that um, that guy who doesn't stop unless it's actually like an injury that's visible. And it's sad because most people would think, okay, like there's something wrong, you should take that break, and I didn't do that. And then the other thing I experienced is it's part of my learned disability, which I'll get to later with I know some of the questions the answers will highlight that. But with my learning disability and having a concussion at the same time, a brain injury, when I ran into a canoe, and that's another long story. But I remember I was driving back from where I ran the canoe, at a camp that I was working at the time, and I couldn't focus on the road. I felt like I was sucking air, and I couldn't focus, where I couldn't even see. I had to pass it over to a friend of mine to drive the car. So there's a lot of things that I just realized that certain things from getting hit in the head, that I was experiencing some symptoms.
For sure. And one of the reasons we wanted to speak with you today, and well, most of my conversations have been with people that have largely been in the hockey community. And I think it's really interesting that, you've had a career through amateur wrestling. And so one of the reasons why I want to speak to you is I wanted to ask what the awareness level like is in terms of concussions in wrestling. And you brought up that point right there, how there wasn't that much people that were helping you. And I find that if they've never been through a concussion, they don't really understand. So I wonder if you can talk a little about that.
So in the pro wrestling, they're very aware now. Even when I was starting, they're very aware. It was just me being stubborn and not telling them how I felt. It was me personally. They're very aware because
Right.
of the whole Chris Benoit thing. They have concussion protocols with WWE, for example. Independent wrestling is getting better at that, a lot better with that, because they're starting to get the resources and tools. But there still is this stigma with pro wrestling where if you're not hurt, and if you are hurt, the show goes on, so you have to keep going through. And that's
It's
where
always a show.
you go on the show. You have to go on because you're entertaining. They come to see you. It's not like sports where if you get hurt, you're on the shelf. Pro wrestling, if you're hurt, you're banged up, you're gonna keep going until you need major surgery. And that's the sad part of pro wrestling. There's no off season, so you're always thinking like, is someone going to take my spot? Because it's based on, not only popularity, but will the fans forget you?
For
I
sure.
don't believe that fact. I don't think any fans will forget you, because if you make an impact, the fans will always remember. And that's what I don't like about some people who are saying like, oh, you can't have this cycle where they can have an off season where they can rest and recoup. Then you can have more people actually be wrestlers who can be a wrestler longer and be more in shape, because it's such a taxing sport. I think it's
Very taxing.
more taxing than any other sport, because there's no off season. And that's nothing against American football. That's nothing against pro hockey, or any physical sport. Pro wrestling, there's no days off. There's no off season. There's you sometimes even before the early, no, I should say the late 2010s. Um, People only had a month off total, 30 days off. That's what the pro WWE. Other Since the new regulations, they have to be at home at least 3 times a week or something like that with COVID. So they're feeling more better, obviously, but it's like you
It's a
still need.
lot.
It's a lot. It's a lot of, and also traveling more than most athletes. Like if you look at WWE, they're going to Japan, they're going to all around the world. You calculate that, and they have to be at the show for a live TV show on Monday in New York City, for example.
Yeah, the show always go. You bring up a really good point. The show always goes on, and no matter what, people always expect to watch, but they don't understand that like there's a person behind the character and they have a life to live. And especially in pro wrestling, it's there's so many injuries, and you can say that about most pro sports. And you brought up another really good point to the idea of stigma with concussion. So I'm wondering if you talk about the importance of understanding stigma that plays a role with concussion recovery.
Uh yeah, the stigma is that, like, I feel like with the stigma, it's more so that it's more so that when you get the concussion, you don't people don't see how the effects are right away. Sometimes it could come later on, and or become right away. Like I've seen a few of my friend of mine who got a concussion, who was out for out for 12 hours, for like a few hours one time, and he slowly came back. And there's other ones where it's like it just like it's minor.
Everyone is different.
Yeah, and even how the brain heals, it's different. Like if you notice if someone takes a break from doing that sport and just doesn't do any physical activity, the brain starts to heal. So it's like it's very stigmatized in the sense that people think if there's one answer. I believe there's one way to go about it. There's not one way to go about it, because not everyone feels differently, but the impact of the injury, the brain injury, is different for every person, depending on.
Completely different. Yeah, no, that's a really good point that we brought up with a number of our guests, that there isn't a template for concussion recovery. And oftentimes, if you haven't been through it, it's comparing it to any other injury. Oh, you break your arm, you break your leg, you're in a cast. But like oftentimes with concussion, you could look fine from the outside, but you're really not fine.
Exactly, 100%. And like I know for myself, when I got when I ran into the canoe and I got a small brain injury, they said like they said mild. I didn't feel right for about 2 months, and I have a scar to prove it, but like that's the only reason why I have a scar, because I had to get stitches, that I opened myself up.
Mhm.
But I legitimately did not feel from end of August of mid-August 2017, so about October, I didn't feel right. Like it felt fog, and I remember for the first like few days, I didn't want to even eat in the mess hall because it was so loud and
Yeah, you don't want to be around anyone for sure.
yeah, and I felt like crap. I personally felt like crap, and what made it worse is that this is my own doing. I drank with it, and I shouldn't have drank alcohol with it. Like that was the stupidest thing I did.
Yeah, it can be tough. It's always a battle, especially if you're dealing with inside your head, and you're always wondering if you're ever going to get better. And oftentimes that's people do resort to other substances. So I completely do understand on that topic. I'm wondering if you can explain a little bit about some things that have helped you in your recovery, both when you've had your concussions and now, whether that be just therapies, resources, anything like that.
So what I've been doing is really been. I recently got into doing yoga and meditating. I wasn't really into that before. Before I just would do nothing. Like I'd sit around and just think that I would like I just rest and not do anything. Like avoid heavy lifting. Like I mentioned earlier, I wouldn't go near um, heavy lifting unless I was with someone else. I really didn't want to do that stuff.
Yeah, you don't want to put
And
yourself in a bad position. Sure.
exactly. And my old job, like working at in events when we were working together, I purposely try avoiding like lifting those cases purposely all the time. But
Mhm.
they
Same here.
you had to, and and like sometimes like some people can't lift those cases, and I felt like okay, like it's expected of me, but I don't want to,
Right.
and I will do it, but I try to avoid it. Like I said, I cut out um well I didn't branch it, but I have cut out drinking recently. I haven't drank in the past like 3.5 months to 4 months, just because lifestyle change, um, to deal with like not only mental health, but just because I haven't craved it, and I can see myself not drinking for the rest of my life. That's just my personal um, perspective. And as I mentioned before, yoga I've done. It's light on the body. It's not hard. You're not, it's your own body weight, and it's not like impactful on your joints, and it's relaxing more so. And especially meditating has been a huge difference. Taking 15 minutes of my day just to turn off everything so I can let my brain focus on things,
Mhm.
really helps.
No, it's funny how what you just described is so much what helped me in my recovery. So after my fourth concussion in 2018, I pretty much like had to stop all physical activity, everything, and I actually ended up connecting with a patient, or a friend of my mom's, who is a yoga teacher who also had sustained concussions. So the class was specifically for people with concussions in a yoga studio run by a teacher who had concussions. And I was very skeptical of trying yoga in the first place, but it was like very friendly, and it helped so much. And since then, like exactly you said, I've gone into practicing mindfulness and practicing meditation. So I'm really glad you brought that up.
Yeah, it's been great. Like and also really just like I know exactly. I mean, like you think like, oh, how's this really gonna help you change? Because people think like, oh, yoga is like the stigma that it's just like it's all stretching, and that it's like not a great workout. It's a tremendously hard workout. Like I
Very
feel
hard.
great afterwards, and it's it's really dependent on how you view things, because people think like you go to the gym and you do these heavy weights and lift them, that you're gonna be like you're ideally strong. No, like there's some points where you lift too much, your body will start to break down too. So it's like it's really interesting that like how you brought that up, because it is important. It really
Very
is.
important. Yeah, I guess we'll kind of shift gears a little bit, but on a similar topic. So you brought up how we used to work together, and brought up that story right there about us not wanting to lift cases, but not understanding why we shouldn't be lifting them. And it basically translates a lot to what you're doing right now with Liebs and Co. So I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about that, and kind of the inspirations behind it.
So behind the behind like that entire thing with Liebs and Co. I started because when I came back from living in France. Um, I worked for a company, and I didn't disclose I had a learning disability. I During my time, even before I left for France, I don't know if you know that I believe we spoke, but I had like multiple interviews with organizations in Toronto before I left for France, and I would disclose I have a learning disability, but I would never get hired.
Right.
And I was frustrated because I was like, I know I have these abilities, but people are just right when I say I have a learning disability, for some reason everything goes
Yeah, there's that stigma
quiet.
right there.
Exactly. Exactly. And I went to, like I mentioned, I went to France. I got the job, even though even when I disclosed I had a learning disability, they were great to me. Um, they were willing to accommodate me. They had HR was unbelievable, and they asked, "Do I need anything?" I said, "No, you already gave me what I needed," which was a broken down to-do list, which is application called Asana. So I felt fine going to work. It was unbelievable. Like I didn't have to think about each task, but I was ready to come home. So when I came home, like I mentioned, I applied for work and I got a job at this company and didn't disclose. 2 weeks in, the employer pulls me aside and says, "You're asking too many questions. You're very annoying. Um, I want to fire you." Then I said to him, I was thinking about firing you." And this is 2 weeks in, and this is
Just
no
start.
like
Yeah.
it's starting like and very little training. Um, and I said to him, "I have a learning disability." And he's like, "Why didn't you tell me?" I'm like, "I don't have to. I didn't mention that." But I was like, I I said, "Well, I haven't been hired when I told people I have a learning disability." He's like, "Well, it's 2019. Everyone has a learning disability."
He
And
said that.
he said that to me, and I was right then and there. I was like, "Okay, I got to get out of here."
You got to get out. Yep.
Yep.
Good for you.
And yeah, I had no choice. Like legitimately, I looked over. It was not going to work. It wasn't going to be a fit. And then he said, "Do you have a plan?" That's the second thing. You don't ask someone who has a disability if they have a plan. They always have a plan because they learn to navigate their world based on how they interact with it since a young age.
Mm-hmm.
And that's anyone with a disability. That's if you have a physical disability, if you have a cognitive disability, if you have a mental health related problem, if you have
That's why I wanted to talk to you, even related to the concussions. It's completely
yeah,
irrelevant to what we're talking about.
exactly. And like even with concussions, it's now categorized into traumatic brain injury. So it's really it's all falling underneath this disability, the category of disability. So right then and there, when he said that to me, it was like, okay, you're not validating what I'm trying to tell you, bring to the table. And I said, "Can you make me a broken down checklist?" He said, "No, you can do that yourself." And in my head, you're not understanding why I'm asking for these accommodations. I know I need a checklist because I have trouble with I have dysgraphia and dysglyphia. Dysgraphia is taking your thoughts to paper. And I showed that with throughout university, throughout high school, even throughout elementary school with that.
Right.
It takes me a long time. And you can, one of the tell sides for me that I have dysgraphia is my handwriting. If you ask me to take notes written fast paced, I won't keep up and it'd be very messy. Um, so when I asked him to do that, he said, "No, you do it yourself." That's asking me to do something that's very difficult, to take my ideas and put to paper. Um, and
After he already wasn't accommodating either.
exactly, wasn't accommodating. And I sat there, okay, like now what am I supposed to do? I just had it again, use my working memory instead of having it broken down to-do list. And I right away was like, okay, it's time to go. And after I realized that, I decided, was thinking in my head, well, I decided that I was going to somehow help with people who have the similar experiences I had.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it really inspired Liebs and Co, because I want to teach people about people with disabilities so they can make their workplace more inclusive. And we're doing that through online modules where we talk about what is a disability, the history of disabilities and looking forward, uh, how to support people with disabilities and the barriers they face. So that's like our current society. And we also have like the history of disabilities, not only the history, sorry, I mentioned that. I mean, we have the protecting the rights of people with disabilities. So we touch on all the policies and procedures and documents and government bodies that protect people. And finally, disabilities in the workplace, so that um, we help them incorporate strategies so that they can make their workplace more inclusive.
And I think that's really great because you're not only creating education, but you're creating awareness so that those boundaries, can be eased off and then hopefully one day not exist. And, on a similar topic, do you think that one of the main goals of the company is to eliminate that stigma and those boundaries for people that are entering the workplace or entering any sort of facet of life?
100%. We're one of our pillars is awareness, education, inclusion, and integrity. So we want people, like, part of the reason and is to build awareness to get rid of the stigma. It's 100% true. It's like, the way I view it, it's how do you make someone be aware of there's a problem? You build first. You bring awareness. You promote that there's a not only promote, but you say there's a problem here, and you bring it to people's attention. That's the awareness. Then you educate them by teaching them strategies and solutions to how they can fix this.
Mhm.
Then inclusion is one of the most important things. This is where where a lot of people are lacking, because they think there's one way for everyone. No, there's so many different ways for people. Like, the way you learn, just Joel, is different the way I learn. I learn from auditory and seeing it being done.
Mhm.
For me to read it, I'm good, but it's difficult. I need to be shown. You might learn something differently. So that's another way that it's really important to be inclusive, so you can have everyone to be able who want to learn this important information to be able to partake and have it. So that even means having ASL available, or having any of these small things like closed captions. You want everyone to have that opportunity to gain the information you're trying to portray.
And it seems like such a simple thing, being inclusive and, say putting yourself in someone's shoes. But like
Yeah.
the story that you just told about that employer, like it seems like it was such a difficult task for him to even do that.
Oh, he could have. My accommodation was very small. It's 5 minutes of their time, and it's free.
Minuscule ask.
Yeah, minuscule ask, but most accommodation. That's another thing. People think a bunch of accommodations cost a lot of money. No, most costs under $500, and you can look this up at Stats Canada. Um, look up the disability survey from 2017, and it'll tell you all the stats that explain to you that you know most accommodations aren't expensive at all, or free. It just, you have to be willing to understand where the person's coming from,
Hmm.
and listen and realize how to make that a better environment for them. Because if people who have a disability generally will make your workplace more not only inclusive, but more efficient. It might, for example, for someone who needs to be more organized, who has better organization skills than I do, but they have a disability where it helps allows them to be more organized.
Hmm.
That'll help the company be, like, for example, color coding binders. Hypothetically, I'm not the best organizer, so I can't say that I'm the best at that. But there's some people who have disability that organization is one of their better strong abilities because of the things they battle.
And I wanted to ask you, I know we talked about how this relates to concussion things, and I know for me, like the stigma in terms of not wanting to talk to people because they don't understand. So I'm wondering if that's a similar barrier that you face, and if that's not something that as well you're trying to eliminate.
That is 100% spot on, Joel. Like, that's a great analysis. A lot of people are like that, especially the invisible disabilities. Because if you see a visible disability, right off the bat, you're not hiding.
Mhm.
People are just scared in general to be judged, to be viewed as lesser than. And with with an invisible disability, you don't know how the person's going to react. Some people say, "Oh, wait till after you're hired, and then you can tell them that, like, the accommodation, so they can't refuse you off the bat." Uh, Other things are just like, some people don't want to be treated different. Some people already have the tools and strategies to work, and they won't
Mhm.
say anything. But for me, I realize it's very important to be open about it, because I won't be put in a box. Because then you can put me in a box based on the fact that once I disclose, you're putting me in a box already. But if I'm ready putting myself in a box, I chose to be in that box. That's where I feel more comfortable. At least I have some control over the narrative.
For sure, and it seems like, it's related to me that it's given you a voice, and it's given you a powerful voice to make a difference. So I really do admire that you kind of created this whole platform for yourself, and you are going to make a huge difference for people down the road.
Likewise, and I feel the same way. Right when I saw you started this podcast, Joel, I knew this was something that was really cool, and because for myself, I remember always wanted to do something with like concussions when I was in sport management at school. So it was really, really interesting.
Yeah, it's just for me is something is like as someone who's been a lifelong hockey fan and just taken away the idea that I can't play hockey anymore. I still wanted to be involved in the sport, and I feel like this was a great way to kind of give back. And we'll shift gears towards the end of this conversation. We work together at the Hockey Hall of Fame, and I know you're just as crazy as a hockey fan as me. So I'm curious if we can talk a little about the current state of the NHL and the culture that it has with concussions.
I think it's on a strong path. They're very good with like the concussion awareness. Like I don't doubt like they are more aware, especially since like the Steve Monitor incident. Like
That
reading
was a
game.
tough. I don't know if you read that book. Like that was a really, really tough book to read.
I've read that book and I love that book, and
So did I. Excellent by Ken Dryden, but very, very difficult.
very difficult. I loved it. I right when I read it and his suggestions to changing the hockey about making it 4-on-4 permanently, I love that idea because yes, there'd be less hitting, but it protect the players more. There won't be as the big hits. There'd be more space, so there won't be. It'd be harder to hit. And if there was a hit, it would be it'd be one of those plays where it's like not unexpected. It won't be blindside type of thing. It would be less blindside hits. So like I agree with that. I don't know if the NHL or any organizations will do that. But I believe that would be the way to go because it would make it quicker. It'd be nicer to watch, and the players are bigger than when our parents grew up. Like
Bigger, faster, stronger, better equipment, everything.
everything, and like I remember my dad telling me like he would watch Yvon Cormier. His favorite, they used to call him the Roadrunner.
Roadrunner.
Yeah, and he was telling me like these players would get beat up but come back and play, and he was always impressed with Yvon Cormier because he was the smallest player on the ice.
Yeah.
And he took abuse. Like Maurice Richard took abuse. My dad was around during the Richard riots. He was a young boy, but he still like he grew up in Montreal during that time, and
Yeah, so did my mom.
and they're like holy like those players took more abuse then than they do now. And I guarantee if you looked at some of the brain injuries, they probably have more so than what the current players have, in the sense just a different style of abuse. Nowadays, of course, it's more obvious because the equipment is that much better and the players are stronger. But I guarantee some of the older players had the same issues. If you look at, for example, I wrote his name down, but
I just find from my personal perspective, like there's such a generational gap where you have all these players like, Cornwall that were part of that old generation who look at today's game and say, oh, they're soft, there's no hitting, there's no fighting. But
yeah,
then vice versa, it's like you have this younger generation who looks at all these players that played and or have died or have serious mental or physical issues. And it's like, I just don't understand that disconnect.
yeah, I agree with you 100%. I just think it's two eras clashing on different viewpoints. It
100%.
really I think that's it, because like even when Cormier was playing, like I wrote his name down. He played like kid like Busher Jackson.
Busher Jackson.
Yeah, like he legitimately like he went from being a top line NHL player to selling hockey sticks outside Maple Leaf Gardens because of the who knows what have happened with his experiences, right?
Right.
And it's definitely a tough thing to deal with because there has to be something there. It's not only based on like hockey. I believe he was in World War I as well, World War II as well. Should I say, because all that must have added up to something.
Yeah, so many other experiences that no one even probably thought of.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like you see it, but some people, I guess, it's just different culture, generations clashing about their views.
And on that similar topic, what's your opinion on fighting in hockey? And do you think it has a place in the game today?
I believe it's embedded in the hockey culture. I don't think it'll ever leave the culture, just because of how fast and quick and how dangerous it can be.
Yeah.
because you're supposed to protect yourself. And I even as a kid, I remember, I don't know if you watched Legends of Hockey,
But what is that?
like the TV show.
I think I did watch it.
They highlighted like old time players about their playing career. And they're always talking about how like they were so tough and like they would fight every night, right? That was something where I was like, okay, I have to bring that into myself, protect myself. Like when I played hockey in house league, like if someone tripped me, I would just, protect
Go
myself
back at them. Yeah.
back at them. I think that nowadays the players still need to protect themselves, but it only will be like after a big hit or be like after one of those emotional standpoints. Given this like pre-planned fights or having these enforcers on the rink. No, I just believe you have to have some tough players who will stand up for your teammate when he gets you know a blindside hit. You need that. That's just in general with hockey, I think, because of how quick and how physical it can be. Because you even see it in the NFL. If someone gets blindsided from a bad hit, you see people pushing, shoving each
Yeah,
other.
they go right after them.
Exactly. I don't think they'll ever leave sports, but
No, it always exists, right?
I just think you need it be more limited, and you have to have those players on your
No,
team.
and you brought up a really good point on as well. You talked about how when you used to watch and then you used to imitate it on TV. And part of the reason why I want to have these conversations is create education and awareness for the next generation, so that they understand that things like that, like glorifying injuries and glorifying toughness, is not everything. So I'm wondering if yeah, you just talk a little bit about some advice to the next generation of athletes in general.
1 second,
Yeah, no problem.
because I did write that down. Yeah, just like the next generation. Honestly, like just like be aware that there's more than one like way to be considered tough. You don't need to be tough by who can take the most abuse physically. It's more just like toughness comes in different forms. Like you can be mentally tough by taking verbal abuse, and just ignoring it and
Mhm.
playing your sport well and playing your position well and blocking out the noise. You can be tough by just not allowing people to take advantage of you in some ways. Like stand up for yourself. Don't let someone else do the be the mediator.
Mhm.
And also just be aware of the potential problems that could come with concussions and from playing sports, because I feel like as an old hockey coach, we used to discuss like we have small talks with parents and players in minor league hockey, and we just bring together our goals and all that, right? For the season, to get everyone to be more inclusive and in sync. I think there should be a topic in that discussion where the players and the parents are there, and you discuss concussions, because
Definitely.
that's something that needs to be aware. I think kids should be aware of it, just because it's one of the most important things. You can get concussion as a 6-year-old, 7-year-old, and
Deal with it for the rest of your life.
yeah, and you just won't know
Simple as
about
that.
it. So it's like one of those things where you see it in minor league hockey. They ban hitting in I believe from 14 up
Yeah.
or 16 up. I can't, I'm mistaken, because of how dangerous it can be. So that's what one of the things that they really need to do is, even though there's no hitting, it's still like physical contact does happen in house league or in select, whoever maybe, because sometimes people lose an edge, right? So I just feel like everyone should be aware of it.
Yeah, I know, and you brought up another great point, how the awareness and education has to come from both the people that are playing the sport and the parents that are playing the sport. Like I can't stress enough how many times I've had the same conversation about coaches or parents that don't understand that the game is not everything. That your children, his health, her health, whatever it is more important than winning the game.
Exactly, and like I've experienced as a coach myself. Like some parents took it so seriously. I
It's
was just like,
insane.
I can't be around this. Like, and I was just coaching house league and select at the time. Like, I love coaching, I love teaching, but that
I had a similar experience.
yeah, it's like the ultra competitiveness kind of takes away the love for the game, and it's the politics as well too.
For sure. And I guess we'll end on one thing. What's like your best piece of advice you could give out there to anyone that's struggling with concussion currently?
Listen to your body. That's the most important thing. Is listen to your body, what you can and can't do that day. Um, like your body will tell you if you're able to do something and that if you should, because you just if you just let yourself be in tune to it, it'll let you know what your capabilities are,
Hmm.
and that's what I just truly believe in, and that's what I was saying from the beginning on. Like it's going to be the same message. Just listen to your body and make sure that you're taking care of it, what the needs that your body's telling you that you should do.
I think that's a really great message, and that can apply to anyone, and I'll add, like, it doesn't make you weak to ask for help if you do need it, but you do need to initiate the conversations both on the person that needs the help and the person that's supposed to be there for that person. So I really do appreciate you bringing it up and talking to you, and honestly, I wish you the best with Liebs and Co, and I'll be supporting you every step of the way.
Thanks, Joel. I appreciate it, and the same with the inherent risk. We would be 100% helping out because it's not only that trying to do the same thing, build awareness about something that's very stigmatized, but
Yep.
they intersect often, and like even just if concussions, your mental health becomes even hard to deal with too. So
It's very
it
hard, and it's a very hard topic to talk about, and that's why I want to have these conversations.
exactly. I appreciate you having me on today, Joel, and I, I wish you nothing but the best of luck, and I'm sure you'll do a great job at getting everyone aware of the stigma of concussions and bringing it more to light to people that are not necessarily educated.
Thank you, Max. I appreciate that. And like I said, likewise on the launch with Liebs and Co. And we'll speak soon. Okay.
Sounds good, my friend.
All right.
Sounds
Have a good one.
good too.